Thanksgiving, Saturday, November 26th, Astoria, Oregon. Cold rain tapping the windows, the Columbia River a sheet of pewter beyond my back deck. I was carving turkey in my own kitchen when my daughter-in-law lifted my gift, wrinkled her nose, and laughed. Seriously, Orson, cheap paper in a frame? You couldn't just even get us a gift card? The knife stopped mid-stroke. Evan, my only son, looked everywhere but at me. That laugh didn't sound like family. It sounded like the last few inches of a trap closing. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I'd spent the morning polishing the walnut frame, the same one my late wife, Lila, picked up from a consignment shop off Commercial Street in 2012. Inside it was a stock certificate dated August 14th, 1978, for 100 split-adjusted shares of North Coast Marine Holdings, a paper relic from when I was a harbor electrician pulling 12-hour shifts and dreaming that one good decision might outlast the bad ones. After a 2010 reverse merger and 2 acquisitions, those shares rolled into NCMH Group Inc. were worth just under $2 million at the November close. I checked the price the day before, the way some men check the weather. Kayla held the frame in 2 fingertips like it was sticky. She set it on the coffee table with a smack, the glass skittering against wood. "It's vintage," she said, voice dripping approval the way a realtor praises a crawlspace. Ivan cleared his throat. "Didn't defend me, didn't touch the frame. Astoria in late November smells like rain and salt and wood smoke. Inside my house, it smelled like thyme and turkey skin, and the citrus cleaner I use on the butcher block. Kayla's perfume cut through all of it, sweet and hard like melted candy on a radiator. I told myself to let it go. Let her be ignorant. Let my son be blind. I carried the platter out, lips tight, and set the turkey down. We said grace. Kayla took out her phone and angled it for a story. Evan didn't stop her. He tilted the bottle so the wine waterfall looked glamorous. The Ring camera over my front porch pinged on my phone with a quiet chime, but in the noise of plates and performative laughter, I didn't check it. "We ate," she performed. He complied. I carved and kept breathing. After dessert, I collected plates, rinsed them in the sink, and stared out into rain that couldn't decide if it wanted to be mist or needles. Their voices drifted from the living room. The clink of glass. Kayla's staged giggle. When it went quiet, I felt a small relief, like maybe the worst had passed. I went back out, and the frame was gone. In its place lay a glossy tri-fold real estate brochure from Kayla Hart, Vertical Bar, Hart and Harbor Realty, her arms crossed, blazer perfectly creased, a gold script K floating above her name. I glanced toward the entryway. No frame on the console. I checked the mantel. Nothing. My phone buzzed. A Ring alert I had ignored earlier. I tapped it. The video opened to my porch at 6:42 p.m. Kayla in her camel coat. Phone at her ear, laugh bright and edged. "Can you believe it?" she said to whoever was on the other end. "Cheap paper. Who even does that?" Ewing pushed rain sideways across the lens. She rolled her eyes in a way I had only seen from strangers. "I still steer this. Don't stop worry," she added, voice dropping. "He sephens. Sentimental. He sephens sign." A heat I hadn't felt since the hospital, since they asked me to initial a line that meant Lila wouldn't be waking up, climbed my throat. I paused the clip and stared at the small triangle icon as if it could explain my life. "Where's the frame?" I asked when they came back through the kitchen. Kayla Sip's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I put that away so it wouldn't splashed." She gestured toward the coffee maker. "And I left you something to look at. New listings, tax tips. You really should talk to someone about the property before December. Rates are moving." Evan took his coat off the hook and didn't meet my eyes. "We thought call you tomorrow, Dad." They didn't set. Instead, Monday Sip's mail came early. A crisp, laser-printed invoice in a clear sleeve, $2,800 due November 28th, 2 days after Thanksgiving, payable to Harbor Home Care and Maintenance, LLC. Service Preliminary Property Support and Care Agreement. Consult with my name and address typed in. A faint watermark of a lighthouse in the background. At the bottom, a note in looping cursive. Kayla's unmistakable realtor script read, "This will keep you secure through tax season. Quick sign and they'll schedule the walkthrough. XOK. I don't scare easily, but there are sounds that unsettle me. A breaker popping. The dull pop of a dock line when it finally gives, the hum that shouldn't be running. That morning it was the sound of my own breath going thin as fishing line. I made coffee I didn't want, sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad Lila used to scrawl grocery lists on, and started a ledger, top line, Kayla, Nov 26, 28. Under it I wrote, ring clip 6:42 p.m., cheap paper, he'll sign. Next line, invoice $2,800, company name date due, her note XO. I underlined November 28th twice. Evidence matters when people pretend. I checked the brown storage tote in the hall closet where I keep documents. The 2012 photo was still there. Lila holding the very same certificate, smiling. A moving box labeled office frames behind her. I slid the photo into a plastic sheet and clipped it with a binder clip to the legal pad. Proof of provenance. I called Evan. He answered on the second ring. Dad, he said. Cautious. You okay? Where's the frame, Ev? I kept my voice even. He exhaled. Kayla put it away. She said she didn't want it to get ruined. In your car. Silence. Then she just wants us secure. She sits thinking big picture. The house, your health, Dad. Come on. I'm fine, I said. And the house is mine. I let that sit there. Can we not do this? He murmured. Please. When he hung up, I stared at the closed kitchen door where the paint is a shade too bright. The place I repainted after Lila bumped the chair against it years ago. A tiny scar under a coat of good intentions. Humiliation is loud and hot. Suspicion is quiet. It sets up a folding chair in the corner of the room and refuses to leave. I replayed Kayla's ring audio twice more, then saved the clip to a protected folder and wrote the file name in my ledger /porch_2022-1126_1842.mp4. I slid the $2,800 invoice into a manila folder and wrote, Bill, Harbor Home Care, 11/28. I made a photocopy and highlighted the due date, the service line, and the note with the little XO like we were all in some sitcom where betrayal is cute and tidy. It isn't set. By afternoon, the rain let up. A white fishing boat idled toward the marina like it belonged to a simpler world. I brewed more coffee I didn't drink and walked room to room. The frame wasn't in the office, wasn't in the bedroom, wasn't tucked on the bookshelf where Lila used to hide Christmas gifts in plain sight behind a row of Ellery Queen paperbacks. I found 2 coffee rings on the coffee table where Kayla had set the frame, the ghost of her carelessness baked into my wood. I pressed a paper towel over the stain and felt something oddly like relief. Not because it would come out, but because a mark is a record, a story the surface tells if you know how to read it. At 4:10 p.m., I drove to Columbia Pacific Bank and asked Shelley, a senior teller who's worked there longer than I've owned the marina, if she could flag my account for unusual activity. Just anything that looks like a fast withdrawal or a care contract. I said, nothing changes without my say-so. She looked over her readers. Everything okay, Mr. Wade? Family, I said. It was both more and less than the truth. Astoria's early dark came down like a curtain. Back home, I wrote 3 names on the next page of the ledger. May attorney, Walt retired deputy, June my sister. And beneath that, call in the morning. Ask about title freezes. Ask about notary logs. Ask about temporary orders. Kayla thought I would get sentimental and sign whatever relieved her of imagination. She forgot I built a life with a woman who taught me the difference between love and permission. Sentiment is not consent, and inheritance is not a suggestion. That night I did something small that felt like the beginning of a war I didn't want but would not lose. I turned the deadbolt on my front door, unscrewed the interior plate, and penciled a tiny X where the screws sat. If someone loosened them, I'd know. People call it revenge when a man puts his hands back on his own life. I call it maintenance. Kayla wanted a game. She should have read the rule printed across every dock in town in fading stencils. Secure your lines before the tide turns. The tide had already turned. She just didn't feel the pull yet. And I had stopped pretending the water was calm. The morning after Thanksgiving, the silence in my house was heavier than the rain outside, the kind of silence that presses against your chest, that makes the tick of the wall clock feel like a hammer. I sat in my recliner with the yellow legal pad on my lap. The first two lines already filled. Ring clip November 26, 6:42 p.m. and invoice $2,800. November 28th, Kayla's handwriting. Beneath those, I left space. I knew there would be more. I stared at the empty frame hook on the wall where the stock certificate had hung overnight. The nail was still warm to the touch. As if mocking me, the frame hadn't just vanished. It had been lifted out of my life, like my wife's voice, like the trust I thought was safe. I made coffee. It tasted like ash. I dumped it in the sink and stood there until the steam faded from the cup. Grief and suspicion are twin weights. One pulls you down, the other keeps you awake. I opened the brown tote in the hall closet, the one with documents Lila and I had boxed when she was first sick. Inside, tucked in a manila folder labeled Keepsakes, was the 2012 photograph. Lila holding the stock certificate, her hair wrapped in a scarf from chemo, smiling despite the IV in her arm. Behind her, a moving box labeled Office Frames. I pressed my hand flat against the photo. Proof. That certificate wasn't just paper. It was a promise. And Kayla had mocked it, tried to erase it. At 10:17 a.m., I drove to Columbia Pacific Bank and asked Shelley, the teller, to check on my account. She leaned in close, whispered like the walls had ears. Mr. Wade, a pending inquiry came through Friday evening. Request for verification of assets linked to property at your address. Company called Harbor Home Care and Maintenance. The same name from the invoice. I asked her to print me the inquiry log. She slid it under the glass. Timestamp, November 25th, 4:32 p.m. Amount requested. $2,800. That's SEP's fraud, I said quietly. She nodded. We can put a note, flag anything tied to that name. I added the slip to my ledger. Bank inquiry, November 25th, 4:32 p.m. Fraudulent. Back home. The house felt smaller. The photo of Lila on the mantel seemed to watch me. My hands itched with the need to do something. But grief slows you, makes every step feel like molasses. That evening the phone rang. It was Evan. Dad, he said, his voice tired. Kayla told me you were upset about the invoice. She just wants to help. You can handle everything alone forever. I never asked her for help. She thinks about your future. Taxes, care, the house. It sets just a plan. Plans don't come with forged bills. Dad, he sighed, long and heavy. She just wants us secure. Secure, that word again. Every time he said it, it felt like another board nailed shut over a window. After we hung up, I found myself staring at a different document. A draft care agreement Kayla had slid across my table last summer. I hadn't signed it then, but now, sitting alone, the temptation was strong. The draft promised everything in neat lawyer's language. Home care, maintenance, financial planning. My signature would mean peace of mind. I pulled a pen from the drawer. My hand hovered. That sips when I heard it. Not in the room, not through the phone, inside me. Lela Sepp's voice, as clear as if she were sitting at the table. Don't Seps you dare give them what we built. Don't Seps let loneliness sell what love paid for. My hand shook. I dropped the pen. I folded the draft agreement back into its folder, shoved it deep into the desk drawer, and locked it with the small brass key. Then I wrote a single line in my ledger, care agreement, attempted, unsigned, November 27th. That night, sleep didn't come. The house creaked like it was holding its breath. I replayed the Ring audio again, Kayla's mocking laugh curling through the speakers. Cheap paper. I scribbled the words across the margin of my notes until the pen tore through. Sunday morning I drove to the harbor. The marina was gray, gulls crying against the wind. My old friend Walt, retired deputy turned PI, leaned on his truck with a thermos. You look like hell, Orson. Family, I said again, that word tasting more bitter each time. We sat on the tailgate. I showed him the ring clip, the invoice, the photo of Lila with the certificate. He whistled low. That SIP's no accident. She SIP's setting you up for a care contract transfer. Next step SWB title. I almost signed. But you didn't set. Because I heard her voice. He sipped his coffee, eyes sharp. Good. Hold on to that. Give me a few days. I selt dig, let her show her hand. When I drove home, the silence in the house was no lighter. But now it wasn't just grief pressing down. It was resolve rising up. Kayla thought silence meant surrender. But in my world, silence is when the current shifts, quiet, invisible, unstoppable. I wrote one last line in my ledger before bed. The weight isn't breaking me, it's training me. And I meant it. Suspicion has a smell. Not a strong one, not at first. More like mildew in a corner you can't see, or copper on your tongue when the storm is still miles away. By the first week of December, the smell was everywhere. On Thursday, December 1st, I met with May, the attorney who helped me close the marina sale in 2019. We sat in her office above a coffee shop downtown, papers stacked high on her desk. She adjusted her glasses, studied the photo of the 1978 certificate I'd brought, then cross-referenced it against current listings. She looked up, eyes narrowing. Orson, do you realize what you've been holding? I nodded, already knowing. $2 million, give or take. Closer to 2.3, she corrected, tapping her pen against the printout. North Coast Marine Holdings merged again last quarter. And listen, if someone SEP's angling to put you in a SEP's care agreement, SEP's they're not just eyeing your house, they stir after this certificate. I slid the ring audio across the desk on a thumb drive. She plugged it in, listened, frowned. She sits reckless, but not stupid. May said, she sits already framing it as caretaking. That sips the angle. Her words weren't news, but hearing them out loud burned. By the time I left her office, rain slicked the sidewalks and the Christmas lights strung across Commercial Street flickered against puddles. The whole town looked festive while my life felt like a chessboard where I'd only just realized the game had started without me. The next morning, December 2nd, Walt texted me, "Meet me noon, Marina Lot." He was leaning against his old Chevy, thermos in hand. Same as always, he flipped open a notepad. Been tailing her, he said. She met a notary on 14th and Duane twice. Not your usual banking errand. Notary? I asked. Yeah, the kind that helps backdate signatures. I saw her hand him a manila envelope. Smelled like paperwork she doesn't want you to see. I clenched my fists, the wind off the river biting my skin. She SEP's fast tracking. Faster than you think. And the kicker? She posts like she SEP's Florence Nightingale. They were helping my father-in-law downsize, guiding him through retirement. SIPs all that garbage. Neighbors eat it up. Half of them told me last night at the Legion Hall how lucky you are to have her. Lucky. The word felt like salt in my teeth. That evening, I scrolled her social media. Instagram, December 2nd, 6:11 p.m., a polished photo of my front porch wreath, Kayla in a cream sweater, captioned "Family First." Sometimes love means giving them the push they need to feel secure. 300 likes. Heart emojis in the comments. You stir an angel, Kayla. Your FEL must adore you. I stared at the screen until my eyes hurt. Beneath the photo, I saved the caption into my ledger, Kayla post at 2 push they need to feel secure. Proof of mask. The next morning, Evan texted me. Do we really need to push you? She just wants to help. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove out to the old lighthouse point. The waves slammed hard against the rocks, wind screaming through the gaps. I pulled the yellow legal pad from my jacket pocket and wrote, Evan repeating her language. Push secure, influenced. By December 4th, the weight of watching had shifted from grief to tension. I checked the deadbolt screws each morning. Still tight, still marked with the X. I logged every odd call, a survey, asking about seniors and home care, a courtesy voicemail offering financial planning services. They weren't coincidences. They were probes, testing the edges of my defenses. That night, Walt called. Caught something else, he said. She told the notary, and I quote, by Christmas Eve, he said'll be sentimental. He said'll sign. I repeated the words to myself until they carved grooves in my brain. Christmas Eve. That was the deadline she was counting on. I tried once more to reach Evan. Invited him to coffee at Blue Scorcher Cafe downtown. He showed up late, shoulders slumped, wearing the hoodie Layla had bought him years ago, the one with the faded Mariners logo. Dad, he said, not meeting my eyes. Kayla says you stirred paranoid, that you think she said stealing. She is. She says you've been talking to lawyers to PIZ. She says you've been talking to lawyers to PIZ. She says you've been talking to lawyers to PIZ. I leaned in. Evan, listen to me. She met a notary, twice. She sits already trying to backdate papers. That sets fraud. His jaw tightened. He stirred his coffee without drinking it. You stir, reading too much into things. She just wants stability. Stability doesn't require a forged bill, I said. He flinched. Didn't answer. His loyalty wasn't broken yet, but it was cracking. On December 4th, I drove home along Marine Drive, headlights catching the spray from the river. The Christmas lights blinked from storefronts, cheerful and blind. Inside my house, I sat at the kitchen table, spread the ledger open, and drew a line straight down the center. Left column, proof. Right column, mask. On the left, Ring Audio. $2,800 invoice. Bank inquiry. Care agreement draft. 2012 photo, PI report. Notary meetings. On the right. Kayla's Instagram, neighbors praising her helpfulness. Evan echoing her words. 2 columns, 2 faces of the same person. The smell of suspicion wasn't faint anymore. It was strong enough to choke. I closed the ledger, turned off the lights, and stood in the dark kitchen, hand resting on the cool frame of the window. She thought she was invisible, but shadows can be traced. And shadows always stretch long before the figure steps into the light. December came in like a knife. I woke on Tuesday, December 6th, the frost lacing the windows over the Columbia, and a decision I'd already made in my sleep. If Kayla wanted paperwork, I'd bury her in better paperwork. Real, dated, notarized, indisputable. I started with the front door. At 9:10 a.m., Astoria Key and Lock sent a tech named Brad. He laid his canvas roll on my entryway rug like a surgeon. I showed him the little pencil X I'd drawn over each strike plate screw the week before. You want full rekey? He asked. Front, back, shop, and the office. Deadbolts too, I said. New keyway. Non-duplicable. He nodded. By 9:48 a.m., brass pins clicked into new patterns. At 10:03 a.m., he stamped DO not duplicate onto 4 matte keys and handed me the receipt. Invoice hash 11,874, $168.42. Rekey X4 Deadbolt X2 1206. Evidence that the only door Kayla could open now was the one in her imagination. At 11:30 I drove to Columbia Pacific Bank and rented a safe deposit box. Shelley walked me to the vault, where the air always feels a degree colder than the rest of town. In the box I placed the 2012 photo of Lila holding the certificate, sealed in a rigid sleeve. A thumb drive labeled Porch_2022-11-26_1842.mp4 and a second with a mirrored backup. Ledger photocopies through page 11. A printed screenshot of Kayla's December 2nd Instagram with URL and timestamp. A draft list titled Protectives to File, Temporary Restraining Order, Title Freeze Request, and a notice to the Notary Board. The original yellow legal pad stayed with me. The missing certificate was still missing, and writing that line in the ledger, original certificate, location unknown as of 1206, cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Back home, I turned to cameras. Not paranoia, documentation. I unboxed 2 Wise Units cheap, reliable motion tags that timestamp clean. One went high in the hallway facing the front door. The other nested between Ellery Queen paperbacks facing the living room. A third, battery-powered, watched the back deck through the kitchen window. I set the clips to upload to cloud into the thumb drive dock tucked behind the router, wrote the device IDs in the ledger, and tested each with a clap. Little green LEDs winked alive. At 2:22 p.m., the doorbell rang. A courier, brown envelope, return address. Harbor Home Care and Maintenance, LLC. Inside, a predated invoice, $6,400 for staging, senior transition plan, and holiday rush rate. The issue date read 12/20, 2 weeks from now, but the envelope bore 12/06 postage and an internal memo at the bottom. Per KH, send early for readiness. Dinner target 12/24. I held it up to the kitchen window. The watermark showed through that same lighthouse silhouette. I photographed the postmark, the envelope, and the memo. In my ledger, 12/06. Predated invoice received $6,400. Envelope postmarked 12/06. Doc dated 12/20. Memo references KHE and dinner target 12/24. Evidence of intent to backdate pressure. I scanned it to PDF, named it HHG_staging_6400_12-20_premail.pdf, saved it twice, and took the original to the safe deposit box before sundown. Paper has a way of evaporating around people like Kayla. Not mine. That evening, I drove the Marina Road loop. Rain came down in fine needles, headlights vaulting the mist. My phone buzzed, rain motion detected. Front porch. I pulled into the marina lot and watched the live feed. Kayla stood under my porch light, hood up, talking into her phone, the kind of whisper people use when they want the world to think they stir, being considerate. The audio filtered through the rain, hissy but clear. Flip by Easter, she said. That sifts the window. Astoria sifts hot through spring. If we stage now, he sef'll be sentimental by Christmas Eve. He sef'll sign. I tagged the clip as porch_2020 2/12/06_1841_flip-by-easter.mp4 and saved it to both Vault and Cloud. My thumb shook just a little, pressing the upload the way it used to shake when I'd tighten a live lug on an engine late in a shift. At 7:05 p.m., a car door thunked off camera. Evan Sipt's voice drifted in. Babe, come on, Don Sipt, do this here. She didn't answer him. The audio cut with the rain. I went home to a quiet kitchen and wrote, Ring capture, flip by Easter, Evan present, uneasy. The next day, Wednesday, December 7th, Kayla played angel in public and surgeon in private. At 8:34 a.m., a staging company robo called me about holiday availability. At 10:12, a notary left a voicemail about pre-review of documents for December signatures. I saved both into a folder called Kayla_pressure, then drafted a letter to the Oregon Secretary of State Notary Public Section, requesting the logbook page for the notary at 14th, and Dwayne on November 30th and December 2nd. I CC'd May and Walt, paper against paper. By afternoon, I had a title company in Seaside flag my parcel. No conveyance without in-person verification of grantor plus attorney callback to on-file number. In the ledger, I wrote the title rep's name, the call time, and the code she asked me to say if anyone tried to move my deed. High water. If the phone rings and a stranger says she's me, they'll ask for those 2 words. If she doesn't have them, the call dies. Cold calculation isn't cruelty. It's the temperature justice requires when family turns opportunist. At 6:50 p.m., Evan dropped by alone. He didn't text first. He came in through the back door, the one off the deck. Shoulders wet, hunching like he was embarrassed by his own height. Dad, he said, eyes taking in the new camera on the bookshelf. Are you recording me? I am recording my house, I said. Sit down. He sank into the chair across from me. His hoodie cuffs were chewed at the edges, old habit. He stared at the table wood grain like it might give him instructions. Kayla Sip's busy, he said. She Sip's got 3 listings before Christmas. She Sip's just trying to... I slid the $6,400 predated invoice copy across to him. She's trying to stage my house for a sale I didn't authorize, with paperwork dated 2 weeks in the future. She talked on my porch about a flip by Easter. I have the clip. His eyes flicked over the memo line, then to the handwritten initials KH. He swallowed. She said this was standard, that we send, keep it in the family. Then why is she hiding receipts? I asked. He blinked. What? Yesterday at your place, when I brought over the crab dip. She slid 2 folded receipts under the Coastal Living magazine when I walked in. I saw the corner Harbor Home Care. Why hide it if it's centered? He rubbed his face. Maybe she didn't want conflict. Conflict is forged by secrets, not sunlight. He didn't argue. The crack in his loyalty widened so slightly you could miss it if you weren't looking for fractures. Before he left, standing in the doorway with cold sneaking around his ankles, he said, She's got good intentions, Dad. Good intentions Don require backdating, I said. Tell her I set him not sentimental by appointment. When the door clicked shut, I watched the hallway camera capture it, a clean, dumb image of a son leaving a father's house with his hands in his pockets. I saved the clip anyway. Sometimes the absence of malice is the only thing you can prove. Thursday, December 8th, I met May again. We sat with a checklist that felt more like sandbags before a storm. Bank no debit without in-person note confirmed with Shelley. Title freeze flag. Active, passphrase, high water. Notary log request. Filed. Temporary restraining order financial harassment interference. Drafted. File it, I said. The words scraped my throat. She studied my face. Turo will escalate things. They set her already escalated, I said. I set up just turning on the lights. We notarized my signatures at 3:16 p.m. The clerk stamped 1208 in that deep blue ink that spreads a little on the page. I watched the date bloom and thought of Kayla's tidy predates and XOs and how ink tells on you when you make it lie. On Monday, December 12th, the Turo filing confirmation hit May's inbox, case ref 23TR 1182. I printed the confirm, highlighted the reference, and wrote in the ledger, Turo filed and pending. Parties notified by certified mail USPS hash 9405-1182. People can argue feelings. They don't argue certified tracking numbers. That night, I put the walnut frame Kayla had found at last in my guest closet behind a stack of throw pillows, empty on the kitchen table, and pressed my palm flat over the glass. 2 faint coffee halos stained the lower right corner. Hers from Thanksgiving. I didn't scrub them away. Because in the end, even lies leave rings. On paper, she was winning narrative. Neighbors, the soft power of a smile that sells. But around my house, locks turned with new teeth. Cameras traced her shadows. The title was braced with a passphrase only I could speak, and a judge's stamp was edging toward the line where sentiment ends and law begins. She wanted me pliable by Christmas Eve. I was setting the table for something else. By the second week of December, the stage was almost set. The locks were changed, the cameras were humming, the ledger was fat with receipts and copies. But evidence alone doesn't end a scheme. You need a stage, a spotlight, and an audience. That seps when I decided on Christmas Eve dinner. Not tradition, not sentiment, strategy. On Friday, December 9th, I called Evan. My voice steady, deliberate. Christmas Eve. 6 o'clock. Family dinner here. Bring Kayla. There was a pause, then a careful, she wanna know who else is coming. Just us, I said. The people who need to be at the table. Another pause. Then, all right, Dad. He didn't sound relieved. He sounded wary. I circled December 24th, 6 p.m. in my ledger and underlined it twice. The words I wrote beside it, stage for confrontation. On Monday, December 12th, Kayla called me herself, her tone syrup sweet. Dinner at your place? Lovely idea. Orson. Should I arrange a photographer? It'll be so nice for my followers to see a real family Christmas. A photographer for what she thought would be my surrender. I smiled into the phone, though she couldn't see it. Sure, Kayla. Invite whoever you think makes it memorable. Perfect, she chirped. It said it'll be magical. Magical. That was one word for it. But the pressure didn't let up. On Tuesday, December 13th, my phone pinged with an alert from Columbia Pacific Bank. Someone had tried to withdraw $1,200 at an ATM downtown at 3:11 p.m. My account was flagged, transaction blocked. Shelley called within minutes. Mr. Wade, attempt denied. Card swipe looked cloned. Location Safeway on Marine Drive. I thanked her, logged it in the ledger, 12/13. ATM attempt $1,200. Blocked. Fraudulent. I printed the notification and taped it to the inside cover. She was still probing, still pushing, testing for cracks. That evening, Walt stopped by. He carried a thermos of coffee and a manila folder. Got you something, he said, dropping it on the table. Inside photos. Kayla at the notary again, envelope in hand. A time-stamped image of her stepping out of a contractor's truck parked at the edge of town. Receipts she'd tucked into her bag, caught by Walt's lens. She's shopping for staging before she owns the house, Walt muttered. Or trying to build paper trails she doesn't have. I said. Either way, it was ammunition. Evan came by that same night. He looked more tired than I'd ever seen him, like a man carrying someone else's weight. We sat in the kitchen. He toyed with his hoodie strings, eyes flicking toward the new cameras like they were spies. Dad, he said softly. Why the dinner? Why now? Because I said, leaning forward, it steps time to stop pretending. She steps not who you think she is. He pressed his palms together, elbows on the table. She steps just pushing too hard, maybe. But she cares. She wants us secure. I slid the blocked ATM notice across the table. His eyes scanned the page. He exhaled sharply. She didn't tell me about this, he murmured. No, I said. She didn't because she seps not planning a future with you, Evan. She seps planning one without me. His face cracked, just slightly. For the first time, doubt flickered. Before he left, he whispered, She sips pushing too hard, Dad. I can feel it. Those words, written in my ledger under 12/13, Evan admission, were the first sign that his loyalty wasn't unbreakable. The next days felt like the tightening of a noose. December 15th, Walt sent me an audio clip of Kayla bragging to a friend outside the grocery store. By Christmas, I said I'll have him sentimental enough to sign anything. He seps old, he seps lonely, and he trusts family. Easy. I wrote it down verbatim. December 17th. May called to confirm the Turo filing had been logged. She forwarded me a scanned copy stamped with the docket number. I highlighted it, stored it in the vault. Another sandbag against her tide. December 18th, Walt's PI work confirmed a notary fraud attempt. Kayla had tried to backdate an affidavit. The notary logged her visit, refused, and left a note May was already filing with the state. The walls weren't just closing in, they were starting to press back. On December 20th, the phone rang, Kayla, voice bright as tinsel. Horson, just making sure Christmas Eve is still on. I arranged for a catered dessert, a photographer, even a little video reel. It'd still be perfect. Perfect, I echoed. She had no idea how perfect. The unease in the house grew heavier with every marked date. I could feel it even in the walls, in the air that hummed before a storm. I'd walk past the empty walnut frame on the counter, run my finger along the faint coffee stains, and remind myself why this mattered. Not just the money, not just the house. Legacy, dignity. The life Lila and I had built with dock wages and late nights and one lucky investment that had grown into a lifeline. Kayla thought she could laugh at that. Mock it, steal it, stage it like a set piece for her career. She thought wrong. By December 23rd, the day before the dinner, I drove to May's office with June, my sister, and signed the trust assignment. June as co-trustee. Shares legally blocked, every angle secured. When I held the pen above the paper, my hand didn't shake this time. I wrote my name clean, firm, final. Kayla could bring her photographers, her charm, her mask of sweetness. I had my own stage ready. And come Christmas Eve, she wouldn't be the one writing the script. Paranoia isn't madness. It's a map of every place you've been hurt, drawn in finer lines each time someone lies to your face. By the week of December 18th, my map had turned into a blueprint. Every corridor had a lock. Every door had a log. Every conversation had a quiet recorder humming behind it. On Sunday, December 18th, Walt called from his truck, wipers thumping. "Caught her outside Beacon Notary again," he said. "She asked the guy if he that or helps family tidy dates for end-of-year filings. Stefan, he told her no. I got the exchange on Mike. I settled drop it." "Good," I said. "We set let a judge hear the same thing." At 10:42 a.m., I filed Walt's audio in the folder Kayla_pressure/notary_18dick.wive and wrote in the ledger December 18th, notary refuses backdate request. Pattern established. It wasn't just one mistake now, it was habit. That afternoon, I checked the Wise dashboard. The hallway cam had flagged 2 clips while I was at the marina. I watched Kayla let herself in with Evan, a tote on her arm, her voice pitched for performance. "See," she cooed. "Just tidying. Feels so cared for at Christmas." Even hovered in the doorway like a weather system that didn't know which way to blow. I saved the clip as Hall_22-12-18_16-09_tidying.wav/mp4 and noted the sound of paper sliding, familiar, furtive. At 6:15 p.m., my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, confirming Christmas Eve staging window 4 p.m. before family arrival, HHC scheduling. I replied from my desktop so the response would auto-archive, "Do not enter. Property is secured. Any entry will be considered trespass." Then I forwarded the exchange to May with a single line. "They're still coming." Monday, December 19th brought a different kind of pressure. Kayla sips Instagram, a polished story reel over my front steps captioned "Holiday Prep for my favorite elder," keeping him secure, festive, and stress-free. I screen recorded the whole sequence, captured the overlay timestamp 12/19/11:06 a.m., and dropped it into the ledger as "holiday prep for my favorite elder." For all her sweetness, her tells were loud. That evening, Evan came by, shoulders folded inward. He stood near the deck door, hands stuffed in his pockets like the boy he'd been at 16, waiting to confess a dented fender. "Kayla Set's got a plan for the place," he said. "She says you still feel better if everything bet is organized." "Organized is not the same as owned," I answered. He looked at his shoes. "I seps sleeping on the couch," he admitted. "She seps pushing hard." "Then let her push alone," I said, softer than I felt. I wrote it down after he left, December 19th. Evans sleeping on couch, loyalty cracking. On Tuesday, December 20th, the Harbor Home Care line rang again. This time a human voice too bright offered holiday rush staging and end-of-year convenience signatures. I kept my tone dry. "Send it in writing." An email arrived 6 minutes later. Subject: Senior Transition, Pre-Approval Packet. Attachments: a PDF checklist. A pre-populated consent page bearing my name faintly in the corner as a gray watermark. I printed the packet, drew a box around the watermark, and wrote in the margin, "Attempted prefill, manufactured consent." The printout went to the vault before dinner. People can argue intent. A Photoshop layer tells its own story. Wednesday, December 21st, 8:03 a.m. May called. The notary office responded. "We have log excerpts for November 30th and December 2nd. Kayla Sepp's name appears. No service completed. They consult only Seps on both lines." "That teps a pattern," I said. "It such is also corroboration," she replied. "And Orson, your Toro notice is out for service. We still likely have the stamped acknowledgement in hand December 23rd. I opened the ledger and wrote across the top of a fresh page, "Walls closing, deck 21-23. Then I underlined it and drew my plan beneath it like a floor schematic. That afternoon I drove to Fort George and nursed a black coffee at the bar while Walt slid into the neighboring stool. He placed a tiny recorder between us like a relic. "Outside Reed Sepp's market last night," he said. "She told a friend Seftil melt at dinner. Sentiment is the lever. People are putty on Christmas Eve. Then we show her concrete, I said. He grinned without warmth. I set be 2 houses down with a parabolic mic, just in case the porch scene repeats. Thursday, December 22nd, was a day for the unglamorous things that win wars. I labeled every file on both thumb drives with YYYMMDD prefixes and printed a one-page index so a judge or a camera could follow without guessing. The paper index went in the vault with June listed as co-access. I texted her the same evening. If anything happens to me, take the index to May. She replied in a minute. Already saved your text. Already gassed the car. June has a way of turning reassurance into logistics that I've always trusted. That night, the house felt like a held breath. I walked the rooms with the lights low and the cameras blipping tiny green in approval. I passed the empty walnut frame where the certificate had lived and laid a folded dishcloth under its corner so the 2 faint coffee rings wouldn't deepen. Proof, not shrine. Friday, December 23rd, dawned with the sky the color of a steel sink. I wore Lila's favorite flannel, the one she said made me look like I actually took weekends off, and drove to May's office with June riding shotgun. The heater ticked, fog ghosted the windshield, and neither of us talked much. You don't narrate when a knife is about to go in. You keep your hand steady. May laid the trust assignment on the table. This moves the NCMH shares into the Wade Family Trust, she said, tapping the title. With you as grantor and June as co-trustee, it limits unilateral actions and requires dual consent for any transfer. We'll file today, time-stamped, and notify the transfer agent before close. I read every line the way an electrician reads a schematic, following the current, looking for shorts. Any back doors? I asked. No, she said. And even if someone waved a notary stamp and a smile, the transfer agent will see the assignment on file and stall. Think of it as a breaker you can throw from the street. I signed at 11:23 a.m. June signed at 11:24. May notarized at 11:26, the stamp bleeding blue into the paper's grain. She scanned the packet, emailed the transfer agent, Ref TA 77,819 Wade Trust, and handed me the filing confirmation at 12:02 p.m. I wrote the times in my ledger exactly as they ticked. 11:23 11ths, 24 11ths, 26 12ths, 02. People forget the hour later. Paper doesn't. We drove straight to Columbia Pacific Bank. Shelley met us at the side desk. Add June Wade as cosigner on the safe deposit box, I said. And a note thada no certificate disbursements without both Wade's signatures. She smiled like a woman who's watched enough families to recognize the good ones. The form printed, we signed. A thin, sensible chain clicked into place. Back at the house, I stood at the sink and stared out at the river as a gull fought the wind and lost, then found it again. My phone buzzed Kayla. Just confirming tomorrow, Orson. Her voice glittered. I've arranged a photographer, a charcuterie tower, maybe even a little video for my page. People love a holiday reveal. I pictured her ring light reflecting in my windows. The clean lines of a story that wasn't hers to tell. 6 o'clock, I said. Doors open at 5:50. Perfect, she sang. You self feel so taken care of. The moment we hung up, I wrote, December 23rd, 2:19 p.m. Kayla confirms spectacle. Then I called Walt. Be ready on the 24th, I said. Mic charged, lens cleaned. Wouldn't miss it? He answered. Some masks only come off under halogen? That evening, Evan texted, Isabel Poo coming early tomorrow. I don't set like how she sets. I just want to talk before dinner. Door sips open at 5, I replied. Then I set 2 things on the kitchen table, the index printout and the empty walnut frame with its faint, irremovable stains. One was my map, the other was my memory. Between them, Christmas Eve would have nowhere to hide. The walls had closed in, not around me, but around her. She just hadn't noticed the space shrinking yet. Because when you build your life on other people's boundaries, you mistake their silence for surrender. Tomorrow, I'd show her what silence has been doing. Its set's been listening. Its set's been recording. It's been waiting for the exact right hour. And now that hour had a name, December 24th, 6 p.m. Christmas Eve came in wet and silver. At 5:41 p.m., Astoria's streetlights smeared across the puddles on Commercial Street. By 5:50, my porch light carved a perfect golden circle on the deck. I set three things on the kitchen table, left to right like a dockside lineup, the index printout, timestamps bolded, the $2,800 invoice copy, and the $6,400 predated invoice with the 1206 postmark photo paper clipped to it. The empty walnut frame sat at the end like a witness with nothing left to say but stains. At 5:55, Evan slipped in, damp hoodie, breath white. He closed the door softly, as if the house itself could be startled. "Dad," he said, "I don't that like how this feels." "Good," I told him. Feeling is the first sense that tells the truth. He looked at the table, at the lineup. "Are you going nuclear?" asked him, telling the truth in front of the person who keeps selling the lie. The oven timer dinged 2 notes, a clean interval. I killed the heat, set the ham on the trivet, and wiped my palms on Layla's old dish towel. The hallway cam blinked green. At 6:01 p.m., Kayla arrived in a cream coat and holiday lipstick, a photographer behind her with a ring light. She stepped into the entryway like a hostess at her own event. "Tell Orson," she sang, "this is going to be magic. We shall do a little reveal by the tree, okay? My followers love a redemption arc." "Tonight isn't set for followers," I said. "Then it sets for family," she countered, smile unfaltering. "Which is the same thing as," said it.
I didn't answer.
I turned the dining room dimmer until the brass fixture hummed, then pulled out chairs. The ring chimed outside, rain stitched the porch in diagonal lines. Across the street, a sedan idled. Walt sat 2 houses down, a shadow with a parabolic mic and a lens that eats masks for breakfast. We sat, plates, napkins, the ham steaming. Kayla pushed her phone into record and angled it discreetly toward me. "Haven," she said sweetly, "why don't you carve tonight? Your dad Sip's hands must be tired." "My hands are fine," I said, and took the knife. The blade went through the meat like a good decision. No drag, no wobble. We passed bowls, answered nothing questions. The room hummed with the kind of politeness that's used as a weapon. It took her 12 minutes. So Kayla said lightly, dabbing the corner of her mouth, "Why don't we talk next steps?" I brought a little checklist, just guidelines, truly, to help us secure your situation before December 31st. You will feel so much better with a plan. She slid a printed packet toward me. Bottom corner, pale and smug, my name in gray watermark. I turned the packet over and laid the $2,800 invoice on top of it. "Here's Sips the first plan you sent," I said. "Do 11/28 for a Scepter preliminary property support and care agreement." Scepter, I didn't twitter it. She laughed. A practice sound. "Oh, that was just an exploratory option. No commitment. Remember, I told you that." I placed the $6,400 invoice next to it. "And here, Sips's staging bill dated 12/20, mailed 12/06 with a memo. Dash per KH dinner target 12/24, Sipsit. That's Sipsis tonight." Her eyes flicked to the envelope photo, then back to me. "Professionals prepare," she said evenly. "There's nothing wrong with being proactive for an elder." I didn't blink. Proactive is bringing a photographer to a dinner where you plan to pressure a man into signing his house away. She tilted her head, smiled tight. "Orson, this narrative you have is evidence," I said, and tapped the index. 2012 photo of Leela holding the North Coast Marine Holdings certificate. 11/26, the ring clip where you stand on my porch and say, "Cheap paper." 12/06, the ring clip where you say, "Flip by Easter." 12/13, a blocked $1 200 ATM attempt at Safeway. 12/18, a notary refusing to backdate. 12/21, the notary log showing your consults. Screenshots of your Instagram posts push they need to feel secure. Holiday prep for my favorite elder. I slid each page across the table as I spoke. Not fast, not dramatic, mechanic steady. The room changed temperature. The photographer lowered his camera. Evan stared at the documents as if they were speaking a language he'd never heard before. Kayla's mascara black eyes hardened. You are misinterpreting support, she said. I have a brand, I have clients, I have a family to protect. You have motive, I said. You mocked a gift you didn't step recognize, a stock certificate you thought was such cheap paper sepal. Then you moved to stage a house you don't set own, backdate a path to title, and manufacture consent with watermarked PDFs. She tried pity. She tried pity like a coat. Orson, you sit her lonely, she said softly. You sit her grieving. I am trying to help you feel secure. Don't use my wife to sell me my own life. I said. The hall cam pulsed. Somewhere outside, a gull screamed like it knew names. Kayla reached into her tote, pulled out a folder. Fine, she said briskly. Let's make the adults comfortable. I brought a simple authorization. Just initials, really. It allows us to stage and list after New Year if you decide it sits right. We can always pull back. Evan swallowed. Kayla, he started, but she put a hand on his wrist without looking at him. Initial here, she said, sliding the form across the table to me, and sign here. We'll handle everything. You shall feel so taken care of. I looked at the line where my name waited like a trap. Then I lifted my eyes to hers. No. I said it the way you throw a breaker, decisively, with a click you can feel. She blinked. A pause, then a colder voice. You don't hiss and understand what you summed, refusing. I do, I said. I reached into a manila folder and placed a fresh document on top of hers. Wade Family Trust, assignment of NCMH shares, executed 12/23, notarized 11:26 a.m., confirmation timestamp 12:02 p.m., reference TA 77,819 Wade Trust with the transfer agent. Kayla didn't pick it up. The color moved out of her face like a tide. Those shares you sniffed at. They scepter not hanging in a frame you can pocket. They scepter recorded, assigned, and require 2 trustee consents to touch. Mine and June's scepters. The transfer agent has the file. You can scepter talk a notary into moving that. Evanes's eyes jumped to me, then to the page. You what? I protected the legacy your mother and I built, I said. And I protected you from inheriting the fallout of someone else's scheme. Kayla Sip's smile tried to reassemble itself. Trusts can be challenged, she said lightly. Courts are slow, narratives are fast. Do you really want to be the man online refusing care from his loving family? I slid the tro case ref across the table. 23 tire 1182. You are served by notice, I said. Temporary restraining order pending hearing January 2nd. Financial harassment and interference. And because you're a realtor, Kayla, because you trade on licenses and ethics, everything we say tonight is recorded. Ring outside, Wise in the hall. Walt across the street with a mic. For when you storm off the porch and tell the truth to your phone. What truth? She snapped too fast. That I sep sentimental, I said. That Christmas Eve makes me soft. That people are putty when the tree is lit. We have you saying it twice. She stood. The photographer took a reflexive step back. The ring light in his hand bobbled like an unmoored buoy. Evan, she said, bright and brittle. Tell your father to stop this. Tell him we set are just trying to be a family. Evan pushed back from the table so hard his chair legs squealed. He didn't look at me. He looked at her. I don't even know who you are anymore. Silence. Not polite. Not weapon. The kind that takes all the air and does not give it back. Come on, she said to him, low and urgent. We don't need this. He didn't move. She grabbed the packet from the table, crumpling the edge, and marched to the door. The hall cam caught the swing of her coat. The ring grabbed the rest. On the porch, under the halo of my light, she turned to her phone and hissed. Can you believe this? I curate a whole evening, and the old man brings out paperwork. He thinks paper can stop me. He thinks a trust is... She stopped, caught herself, and smiled the big public smile at the lens. Merry Christmas, everyone. Taking care of family tonight. Walt's mic doesn't love smiles. It loves the words women say between them. Inside, Evan stood in the doorway. breathing like he'd run a mile. The photographer lingered, eyes wide, then slipped out sideways like a cat. I stacked the documents back into order, slow. The index on top, the $2,800 and $6,400 beneath, the trust assignment like a spine. Evan finally looked at me. Is it all true? Except's all written, I said. And when people lie, paper doesn't set care who they are. He nodded once, small as if a bolt had seated. Then he sank into the chair and put his head in his hands. The front door shut with a wind-sucked thud. The ring chimed again, motion. Walt would capture the porch meltdown, the way Kayla's voice wobbled when there were no plates to pass, no dimmer to hide behind, no sun to absorb the blow. I carried the walnut frame to the sink and held it under warm water. The faint coffee rings didn't fade. Good. Let them stay. Let them testify. Behind me, Evan Sefta's voice was rough. Dad, what happens now? Now, I said, drying the glass with Lila Sip's towel. We stop cooking in the dark. He gave a short, broken laugh that wasn't Sefta a laugh at all. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, I said, and turned the deadbolt. The pencil X I'd drawn weeks earlier was still crisp. No screw had moved under someone else's hand. On the table, the index waited. On the porch, Walt packed a recorder full of maskless sound. In the cloud, clips nested like eggs. Kayla had come for a sentimental signature. She left with a record. The showdown wasn't a roar. It was a ledger read aloud. The breaker thrown at the precise hour, the city tuned itself to carols. And outside, Astoria's rain kept falling, patient, persistent, indifferent to brands and ring lights, washing the porch as if it knew January was coming and with it, a judge. Tomorrow the masks would start to crack. But tonight, in my house, one had already. Christmas Day dawned gray, the kind of sky that feels like damp wool pulled tight over the town. My kitchen still smelled faintly of ham and scorched tension. The table was bare except for the walnut frame propped upright now, coffee stains dark as bruises. I left it there on purpose. A reminder, a witness. By 9:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification. Ring. Motion detected. I opened the feed. Kayla in her cream coat standing on my porch again. This time she wasn't smiling for followers. She was yanking on the door handle like it owed her. My deadbolt held. She muttered, low but caught on the mic. He's going to regret this. Then she stomped off, heels splashing in puddles. A white contractor's van idled at the curb. I snapped a screenshot 12/25, 9:12 a.m. TRO violation attempt. Contractor accomplice present. Saved it to the vault. An hour later, Walt texted, got her talking to a contractor behind Reed's Market. Said she can backdate a staging invoice. Just needs the right notary. I've got it on tape. I wrote in the ledger December 25th. Troll ignored. Pi Records plotting back date. The ink bled a little where my hand pressed too hard. The fallout spread faster than snow melt on asphalt. On December 26th, Evan texted me at 8:07 a.m. I didn't know everything. I'm sorry. Short, stark. The kind of message you read twice because you want more, but there isn't any more to give. That afternoon, I saw his car parked outside a motel on Marine Drive alone, curtains drawn. I didn't knock. Some truths a man has to sit with in silence. Kayla's sepsis mask began to crack online. December 27th, 10:15 a.m. She posted a photo herself in a holiday sweater, holding a mug captioned "Family is everything. Taking care of my elder has been a journey of love." But the comments told another story. Didn't you say last week you were staging his place? Why is his trio filing public? Astoria courts. Girl, you flip houses, not family. I screenshotted the thread, saved it, mask slipping, pixel by pixel. On December 29th, May called. Kayla tried to file a supplemental affidavit with the court clerk. They flagged it. The notary signature line was blank. She sips desperate, Orson. Good, I said. Desperation leaves footprints. By New Year's Eve, the whole town was murmuring. Neighbors at the marina who once praised Kayla Sepp's sweetness now whispered, thought she was helping him. Funny how Thebe Helpwin looks like a staged house and fake bills. Poor Evan, kid looks hollow. Reputation spreads fast in a place as small as Astoria. One week you're an angel, the next you're an opportunist caught on porch mics. The Ring and Wise cameras kept feeding me proof. January 1st, 3:42 p.m. Kayla at the edge of my driveway, talking into her phone. Voice sharp. They're painting me like a thief. I'm not, he just doesn't know what's good for him. Her tone cracked at the edges, brittle as thin ice. I clipped it, labeled it mask, underscore 2023-01-01 underscore fragile.mp4. Inside, my house felt lighter. Evan came by briefly that evening, shoulders slumped, eyes red. Seppin not staying with her, he said flatly. Not tonight, maybe not ever. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stood in the doorway like a man who doesn't know if he's welcome. You don't need to explain, I said. Paper already did. He gave a short laugh, half pain, half relief, and left. By then, Kayla Sepp's online world was crumbling. Followers who once adored her holiday reveal, reels now stitched her videos with my TRO notice, screenshots of invoices, neighbors' Sepp's gossip. One comment stuck in my mind. Sweet masks always crack. Some just take longer under the light. On January 2nd, the courthouse would open. A judge would hear every invoice, every ring clip, every fraudulent attempt. But I didn't need to wait for the gavel to know. Kayla's mask had already shattered. Not because I exposed her, because she exposed herself on porches, in invoices, in captions typed with too much arrogance and not enough fear of paper. That night I closed the ledger on page 33. The last line of the day read, "Masks don't break all at once. They peel, they slip, they sweat. And then one day you realize the person underneath was always there." I set the ledger beside the walnut frame, the stains dark against the glass. Proof, not memory. Tomorrow the gavel would fall. But tonight the silence in my house wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. On Monday, January 2nd, Astoria felt newly scrubbed. The storm had rinsed the streets. The courthouse steps shone like wet slate. I carried a slim black folder, not heavy. Weight is for doubt. Mine held an index, copies, and a thumb drive labeled like a lighthouse lamp. 2022-12-22 underscore index. 8:41 a.m. I met May outside Department 3. She wore the calm face of someone who trusts the paper she's carrying. June squeezed my shoulder once, quiet and solid. Evan stood a few paces away, hands jammed in his jacket, eyes on the floor like the wood grain could comfort him. Kayla arrived with a smile polished to courtroom sheen and a blazer one shade lighter than arrogance. No ring light today, only fluorescence and a clock that doesn't fluff followers. We took our seats. The bailiff called the calendar. Wade Vifhart, case Riff, 23 TR 1182. The judge on, Meredith Kell, leaned forward with the look. Carpenters wear when they sight down a board. Appearances: May Rose. May Connolly for petitioner Orson Wade. With me are Mr. Wade and co-trustee June Wade. A lawyer I just never seen before stood for Kayla. Thomas Rusk for respondent Kayla Hart. The judge nodded. We suffer here on petitioner sepsis application for a temporary restraining order and related relief. I read the filings. Miss Connolly, evidence? May didn't clear her throat or allow drama to creep in. She placed the index on the lectern. Exhibit 1 2012 photograph. Mrs. Wade holding the North Coast Marine Holdings stock certificate, provenance and possession. Admitted, the judge said. Exhibit 2 ring video, November 26th, 6:42 p.m. Miss Hart on Mr. Wade's porch, cheap paper. Exhibit 3. Invoice $2,800 dated November 28th from Harbor Home Care and Maintenance, LLC, bearing respondent's handwritten note, push Orson to sign, remind about taxes. Exhibit 4, bank log, Nov 25, 4:32 p.m. Third-party asset verification request tied to that entity. Exhibits 2 through 4, the judge asked. On the thumb drive and his hard copies, May said. The clerk took them. The screen blinked. Kayla's porch smirk filled a monitor the size of a kitchen window. The courtroom went very still at cheap paper. May kept going, pace unhurried, spine straight. Exhibit 5, Instagram screenshot. DQ caption. Sometimes family needs a nudge. Exhibit 6, ring video. December 6th, 6:41 p.m. Respondent flip by Easter. Exhibit 7. Predated staging invoice $6,400. Document date DK20. Postmarked DK6. Internal memo per KH dinner target 12/24. Rusk stood. Objection foundation as to authorship of memo. May didn't net blink. Foundation via PI Walt Hargrove Declaration, paragraph 9, and the business record cover sheet from the vendor, both filed with our moving papers. Overruled, the judge said. Exhibit 7 admitted. Exhibit 8. May continued. Columbia Pacific Bank notice. Attempted $1 200 ATM withdrawal on December 13th. Blocked pursuant to petitioner's fraud flag. Exhibit 9. Notary log excerpts. Nov 30 and December 2nd, showing respondents' consults, no services completed. Exhibit 10 audio deck 18 respondent asks notary about tidying dates for end-of-year filings. Notary refuses. On the screen, Kayla's voice leaked from the tiny speaker. Tidy dates. It hung in the air like the smell of overheated wiring. Exhibit 11. Wade Family Trust assignment of NCMH shares. Executed December 23rd, notarized 11:26 a.m. Transfer agent confirmation 12:02 p.m. Reference TA 77,819 Wade Trust. Exhibit 12 True Service Confirmations, USPS certified. Tracking numbers ending in 1182, and ring clip showing respondents' December 25th entry attempt after notice. When May finished, the index had been walked end to end, dates, amounts, places, no pauses large enough for a lie to hide in. Judge Kell looked to Rusk. Response? Rusk straightened a cuff that didn't need straightening. Your Honor, these are misinterpretations of a loving daughter-in-law's care. Miss Hart is a licensed realtor, trained to stage and support seniors. The invoices were placeholders. The social posts, mere branding. As for the notary, there was no act performed, and the phrase tidy dates, while perhaps inelegant, does not constitute fraud. The judge lifted a page. Counsel explained the $6,400 invoice postmarked December 6th, but dated December 20th with a memo referencing a set of dinner target 12/24. Holiday lead times, he said smoothly. Vendors, and flip by Easters. She asked, eyes on him. Rusk opened a hand. A casual remark about local market cycles, not a plan to dispossess. May didn't rise. She didn't need to. The words already existed on video in the court's record. The judge turned to Kayla. Miss Hart, would you like to be heard? Kayla stood, palms flat on the table. I was helping, she said, voice bright and trembling. He sips lonely. He needed structure. I create plans for people. The paperwork it sips normal in my field. He overreacted, and a flip by Easter sips was a joke. We, my followers, like a little fun. Did you remove a framed document from Mr. Wade's home? The judge asked. Kayla Sip's eyes flicked. I put it somewhere safe. Where is it? The judge said, crisp. Silence stretched. Rusk touched her sleeve. No answer, he said quietly. Judge Kell leaned back, hands tented. She looked past the people and into the pattern. Here is what I see. A vulnerable elder's valuable asset, NCMH shares, established by photograph and assignment. A campaign of pressure documented by invoices, social media, bank alerts, and recordings, attempted use of notarial services to create retroactive paperwork, and a Christmas Eve push timed to induce sentiment. This is not care. It is coercion dressed in the language of care. Rusk started to speak. She lifted a palm. No. She turned to May. Trio is granted and will remain in effect pending further order. Miss Connolly, draft an order restraining respondent from contacting vendors, contractors, title, or bank on petitioner's behalf, from entering the residence, from holding out the property for sale, and from representing the NCMH shares as available. Include a directive that respondent return any property removed from petitioner's home within 72 hours to petitioner's counsel. She turned to the clerk. Set a compliance review for January 9th at 9 a.m. Then the line that broke the last of Kayla's posture. Based on Exhibits 9 and 10, the court refers the matter of notarial conduct and respondents' requests to the Oregon Secretary of State Notary Public section for review. The court also refers respondents' conduct to the Oregon Real Estate Agency for ethics evaluation under her license number, which counsel will provide. Kayla sits mouth opened. No sound came out. Restitution? May asked gently. The judge nodded. On a prima facie showing, respondent shall reimburse petitioner for actual costs incurred in legal protections to date, filing fees, service PI documentation, subject to later adjustment. Submit an itemized statement by January 6th. The gavel didn't slam. It tapped, one small, definite sound, like a breaker going to off. Outside, on the steps, rain blew sideways. Evan stood under the awning, jaw tight, eyes wet but unshed. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "You stir here," I answered. "That counts." May folded the order into her folder, edges square. She has 72 hours to return anything she lifted. If the certificate SEP's gone, we still get a replacement through the transfer agent. The assignment protects you. June linked her arm through mine. "Home," she said, the way Lila used to make one word end a whole argument. Across the plaza, Kayla stood with her lawyer under a black umbrella, speaking fast, head jerking small, a marionette whose strings had knotted. Phones lit in the hands of people who love a public story. Astoria is too small for secrets that echo this loudly. In the truck, I placed the court order on the dash. The print was still warm. Justice isn't loud. It's formatted. It comes with headers, exhibits, and dates. It doesn't ask for your faith, only your paper. I drove home under a peeled sky, river steel and calm. In the kitchen, the walnut frame waited, coffee halos faint and immovable. I set the order beside it and wrote a single line in the ledger. January 2nd. Trial granted. Referrals made. Restitution ordered. Mask removed in a room that records nothing but facts. Tomorrow I would wake in the same house. The difference would be air. And on January 3rd there would be time to wipe glass, to choose a photo, to speak to my son like a man who has finally learned that love is not a door anyone gets to stage. Next came the part that isn't revenge, it's repair. On Tuesday, January 3rd, the storm finally broke. The river looked like brushed steel, calm under a sky rinsed clean. My house smelled of coffee and lemon polish. No invoices on the counter. No staged brochures scattered across my table. Just quiet, honest quiet. Evan came early. He stood on the porch, no Kayla in tow, no shadows dragging at his shoulders. The ring captured his pause before knocking, as if the camera itself demanded confession. Inside, he sat at the kitchen table where every piece of her paperwork had once lain. He ran his hand over the grain like he was memorizing it. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said finally, "for not seeing it, for not standing up sooner." I poured him coffee. "You saw what you wanted. We all do. It sets the seeing. After that counts." He nodded, eyes raw. "I thought love meant loyalty. I didn't realize loyalty without truth isn't love at all." I let the silence hold. Sometimes silence is kinder than words. That afternoon, I opened the vault at Columbia Pacific Bank. Shelley slid the safe deposit box across the counter. Inside, the 2012 photo of Lila holding the certificate, the thumb drives, the ledger copies, the Tarot confirmation, all intact. But the certificate itself was still gone. It didn't matter. The trust assignment was recorded. The transfer agent had the file. The shares were safe. Kayla's hands, no matter how polished, couldn't touch them. Legacy had outlasted theft. Back home, I carried the walnut frame to the sink. I filled a basin with warm water and set it in gently, letting bubbles rise around the wood. The coffee rings didn't fade, but I didn't scrub. Some stains aren't flaws, they're proof. I dried the glass with Lila's old towel, soft from years of washings. Then I pulled a photo from the drawer, a picture of her on the marina deck, hair flying, sun on her face, the Columbia behind her in silver streaks. I slid it into the frame. It fit as if it had been waiting all along. When I set it on the mantel, the house felt different. Not empty, not heavy, just whole. That evening, Evan came back with a six-pack. We sat on the porch, river dark and wide. He drank slow, like a man relearning pace. "Do you hate her?" he asked quietly. "I don't always hate," I said. "It's sep's too expensive. What I feel is relief." He nodded, eyes fixed on the current. "I don't set even know who I was, letting her talk for me." "You still find out," I said. "Not all at once, but you still find out." As night fell, I wrote the last line in my ledger. Page 38, ink steady, words clean. Revenge is just the boundary love draws when respect runs out. I closed the book and set it beside the frame. Paper and picture, record and memory, justice and legacy. Astoria slept under its blanket of fog. Tomorrow the river would move as it always had. Contractors would drive their vans. Neighbors would sip their coffee. Kayla would sit under lights that asked harder questions than followers ever did. And me, I would breathe in my own house. I would run my hands over the wood Lila chose. I would know that silence, when guarded, can be peace. She hadn't stolen anything. She had given me back the truth that I was never alone, not with paper, not with memory, not with love that refuses to be staged. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the mantel where Leela's photo glowed faint in the lamplight. "You didn't lose me," I whispered to the empty room. "You gave me away." And I took myself back.